Very glad I put you on the spot.
Well,
I'm very glad that I have exercised my freedom of speech.
You get my point. It's like you're doing what you should do, which is digging a bit to see what the hell's going on. So and that is what you should do. But you're exercising your freedom of speech to certainly risk offending me. And that's fine. I think more power to you as far as I'm concerned.
So you haven't sat there and I'm just trying to work that out. I mean,
ha, gotcha.
You have got me. You have got me.
Do you have any comments on the Nazi presence at your protest? The presence of Nazis and white supremacists assaulting people at your protest. Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, I don't like Nazis. The reason that men and women make different amounts of money is because of their gender. That's highly debatable. That's highly debatable.
Actually, one of the things absolutely true, because there's never been a secular humanist government on the planet.
I don't know. I think the Soviets were pretty secular.
No,
humanists.
Then, I know with all due apologies, you do not know the first thing about what secular humanism is. You should read the Secular Humanist Manifesto.
They've written the idea that women were oppressed throughout history is an appalling theory. They haven't had a great time, though, have they?
Who has had a great time in history?
But men have had less of a
really, have they? Have they? By what standard? By what standard?
Well, I'm just saying, if you're a woman...
How about war?
But it took longer for women to get the vote, and women belong to their husbands, and in this country, one woman dies every week from domestic violence, a man dies like once a month, I believe, from that same cause. Like, aren't there some clearly obvious things that women are victim of as a result of their gender?
There are inequalities in the catastrophes that the genders are subject to. And so, look, first of all, there's some things we got to get straight. History is a rough business. Everybody had it rough. In 1895, the typical Westerner lived on less than $1 a day, which is absolute poverty by today's standards, right? And so people were brutally poor for almost the entire course of human history. It was rough. You say, well, did men or women have it worse? It's like, well, you know, that's a complicated question. But one of the things you can say is everybody had it pretty damn bad. And I'm not suggesting in the least, and have never suggested that there's no domain for social action. I'm suggesting that people who don't have their own houses in order should be very careful before they go about reorganizing the world, which happens in many ways. Backlash against masculinity, and a sense that there's something toxic about masculinity.
But what is this idea of being why is society overly feminized?
Well, I didn't ever say that society was overly feminized. So if we're going to discuss my views, we should use my actual words. I have the right to determine what language I use, especially when it's backed by punitive legislation. And when the words that are being required are the constructions, they're artificial constructions of people I regard as radical ideologues whose viewpoint I do not share. That's pure narcissism at work, by the way.
A question for Professor Peterson. Why do you feel that someone's personal gender identity and pronouns infringes your free speech? Can one not also argue, based on your interpretation, that professors can use racial slurs in their classroom and that the inability to do so would violate their freedom of speech?
There's a difference between saying that there's something you can't say and saying that there are things that you have to say. And I regard these made-up pronouns, all of them, as the neologisms of radical PC authoritarians. Do you understand that? And I'm not a fan of that sort of person. And the reason I'm not a fan of that sort of person is because I've done my homework. I've read everything I can get my hands on in the development of authoritarian political systems, and I know the literature inside out and backwards. And I am not going to be a mouthpiece for language that I detest. And that's that. The whole patriarchy thing, I think you have no idea how pernicious and dangerous it is.
Well, no, I don't. I really don't. Go on.
Throughout history, Marxists say, well, that wasn't real Marxism. What it really means, and I've thought about this for a long time, it's the most arrogant possible statement anyone could ever make. It means, if I would have been in Stalin's position, I would have ushered in the damn utopia instead of the genocidal massacres, because I understand the doctrine of Marxism and everything about me is good. It's like, well, think again, sunshine.